Hello and welcome. Today we'll be looking at all the wonders inside the Norman Church of St. Peter's in Northampton. I'll show you evidence of beautiful Anglo-Scandinavian carvings, one including a green man, stunning Norman architecture, and beautiful Victorian stained glass windows. This lovely church is steeped in history, and archaeology suggests that there were two earlier Saxon churches on this site where it stands now. One was made of wood and the other of stone. The church also stands near the site of a Norman castle. I do love stone carvings. They are so beautiful and mysterious, as a lot of them come from prehistory, so we can only guess their meaning and purpose. Here we have my favourite piece, the Anglo-Scandinavian carving. This carving represents earlier Saxon activity and dates from the 10th to 11th century. It depicts carvings of beasts, birds, and a green man type figure, and is associated with the shrine of Saint Ragnar, who was a 9th century prince who was slain by the Vikings. I love this story, and I will do a separate video of it as there's lots to uncover. It's described as Anglo-Scandinavian as it dates back to the time of Dane law and shows Scandinavian influence on the East Midlands. The carving was found in a nearby ditch in 1843 and is thought to have been a grave slab that was in an earlier church on this site. The artistic skill in this carving is incredible, and we're so lucky to have it in such good condition. Also, there is another, much smaller Anglo-Scandinavian interlaced carving that's also housed at the church. It's not as intricate, but I think it's just as important. These carvings predate the next thing we're going to look at, and that is Norman architecture. Built around 1160 by Simon, Earl of Northampton, St. Peter's is a premier example of 12th century Norman architecture and is considered one of the finest Romanesque churches in England. The nave features impressive detailed carvings on capitals of foliage, beasts, and the renowned man being swallowed by a monster. Here's me looking for him, and here he is. He is linked to the prophet Jonah, who in the Bible disobeyed God's command and ended up being swallowed by a whale. This also depicts the medieval idea of hell, as the monster symbolises the dangers of sin and foolishness. The church also boasts of great Norman arches. Some are left plain and others feature chevron and zigzag patterns. Here we can see more of the intricate carvings on the corbels too. These carvings are another treasure that we are fortunate to have, as in the 17th century the carvings were plastered over. This was due to Puritan Reformation, which sought to remove ornate imagery or anything they thought was idolatrous from churches. Thankfully, the carvings were meticulously uncovered in the 19th century by local antiquarian Anne Elizabeth Baker. What's even more remarkable is that she did all this with a bone knife, and it took 11 years of dedication. These restorations by Anne were part of an extensive restoration of the church in the 19th century by architect Sir George Gilbert Scott. These windows reflect high Victorian Gothic revivalism and commemorate local figures. One of the windows includes a scene of St. Peter receiving the keys to heaven. Other notable items in this church are the bust of William Smith, the father of British geology. He's buried in the churchyard here, and he died in 1839 while staying with Anne Elizabeth Baker and her husband. There are also these really beautiful carved wooden pews, and this font is from the 14th century, and I think you'll agree it's absolutely stunning. This church gives us insight into the history of Northampton, and there is so much more inside and out. And thankfully it's under the church's Conservation Trust and is a Grade 1 listed building. It costs only £3.50 to visit and is well worth the small price. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already.